All right, now we are looking at sketching the graph of y equals a sine of x or y equals a cosine of x. So a on this graph actually refers to your amplitude of your sine graph. So if we have our sine graph and it looks like that, the amplitude is just the distance from the center line to the highest point, or the distance from the center line to the lowest point. So just to give you some frame of reference, we're just going to use a t-chart to calculate this or to graph this, but I just wanted you to know what amplitude is referring to and what this a value actually does. All right, so we are going to do a t-chart and we are going to go by increments of pi over 2. Pi, and we'll do 3 pi over 2. So we're going to evaluate this at 0. So 3/2 times the sine of 0. If you type into your calculator sine of 0, you'll get 0. So 3/2 times 0 is 0. Now we're going to plug in pi over 2 for x. So 3/2 times the sine of pi over 2. So sine of 90 is 1, and you can see that, or sine of pi over 2 is 1 when you plug that into your calculator. So 3/2 times 1, that's going to give us 3/2. Now we're going to plug in pi. Sine of pi is equal to 0, so we're going to go back to 0. And now we're going to plug in 3 pi over 2, which is 270. Sine of 270 is -1, so that's going to give us a -3/2. And then to graph those, just going to do a graph here. And on my x-axis, I'm going to have 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2. And I know that I'm going to go up 3/2 or 1.5. So my first point is 0, 0. And I'm going to go pi over 2 up to 1.5. I'm going to come back to 0. And I'm going to go 3 pi over 2 down to -3 over pi. So that gives us a nice little rough sketch. Okay. All right, this next question, you can see we have a 2 in front of the x. So we're going to see how that changes the graph. This is referred to, or this helps us to calculate the period of the graph. That is how long it takes to repeat one cycle. So if we have a graph, a sine graph that looks like that, the period would be from here to here, because that's one complete cycle of the graph. And later we'll get into how to calculate the period algebraically. But right now we're still just going to